All right, hi everybody, and welcome to Earth 10 Antarctica. And this is a class where, simply put, you're going to learn a lot about Earth's least explored and also least understood continent. You're going to start learning stuff right away, but this first lecture is mostly going to serve as an introduction to the course and an overview of what type of material we're going to be covering over this course. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about my own experience and background with the continent and how that led into me teaching the class. So the first half of this lecture is going to be an introduction and an accompaniment to the syllabus where I outline grades and types of assignments. And the second half of the lecture, which will be uh, uh, that is a cat on keyboard moment, and I promise you there will be at least more than one of those. You can blame this little lady for it. But anyhow, I'll also talk a little bit more about my own experience, and that will be the second half of this lecture that will be uploaded as a separate video to YouTube, simply just so the videos don't run too long. And none of the material in lecture one. This lecture will be on the quizzes, the midterm, or the final, but you will definitely want to pay attention to this lecture simply because it contains a lot of important information about how the course will be run. So, what do we actually learn about in this class? And why is this class being offered as an elective? And the second half of the lecture, Why Antarctica, sort of gets into it a little bit, but for the most part, this class has an earth science focus, and we offer this at UCSB because our university has a long history of Antarctic research, and I've actually been a part of that. I'm an alumna of UCSB. I got my master's here several years ago and now work here as a lecturer part-time, and my research was actually based in Antarctica. And you're going to hear the term interdisciplinary thrown around a lot, but it's accurate because there's a lot to know about Antarctica. And if you're going to structure a class around Antarctica, even if it overall has an earth science focus, there's a lot to cover. And this class is largely focused on what I'd call polar science, and it's similar to an oceanography course in that it has the overall focus of Antarctica the same way an oceanography class has the focus on the oceans, but you learn about different things in oceanography like ocean exploration and ocean wildlife and currents. And likewise, in this class, we learn about the climate of Antarctica and talk about how and why Antarctica is so cold and windy. We cover geography and learn about maps. I actually got the order mixed up there. We do geography first and then climate and weather after that. And after climate and weather, we start doing some introductory geology because this is an earth science course overall, and that's what my background is in. So we learn about rocks, different plate boundaries, and also some paleontology, aka the study of ancient life, and learn about fossils. And with that in our pockets, we cover the earth history of the continent, learning about how geologically Antarctica has changed over geologic history. And yes, we do learn about penguins and the other organisms that call Antarctica home. And we do that after the paleontology portion of the class to give you some context as to how the current life got there, and also how the current life in Antarctica is kind of the survivors of Antarctica becoming a cold, dry, and difficult place to live, frankly. We talk about glaciers, and we talk about climate change. And one thing I'd like to emphasize with this class is that it emphasizes the human interaction with Antarctica, because we're interested really in how humans have interacted with Antarctica throughout its history. So we talk about aspects such as the fact that it wasn't discovered until relatively recently, how it's never had an indigenous population, the history of Antarctic exploration. So we learn about Ross and Amundsen and Shackleton and a number of other figures. And the establishment of the Antarctic science programs that actually produce the science that we talk about in the course. And sadly, we talk about the effects of anthropogenic climate change. And one Antarctica-specific aspect we talk about related to that is how Antarctica actually has some extremely valuable records of past climates that help us put the current climate change into context. So here's a bit about me. And first off, I do actually have my office hours listed on here. They're also listed on Gaucho Space and on the syllabus. And you might notice that they coincide with the times listed in gold for the lecture, with a little bit of extra time just just so that I can make myself a bit more available. And I'll have a bit more on this specifically, but as you realized, I didn't put this lecture out earlier today. It's presently 10 o'clock at night. I hope to not be putting out lectures this late going forward. In this one instance, I have had a very jam-packed weekend and got a little bit behind with putting some of the material together. But the lectures themselves will not be synchronous, so I'll instead be having a discussion session during the time that would function as my office hours. So I'll be available to answer questions during my office hours, and sometimes I will have review sessions. So this class is not about me and my experience in Antarctica specifically, but I have actually been there, and I will have a lot of photos from my field season. And don't worry about my thesis title, that's just why I went to Antarctica, and I'll have a little bit more on that during the second half of this lecture. Remember the word lamprosphere if you want to try to give yourself a fun little test in the second half. But my academic career has largely so far been spent studying what makes rocks and minerals up chemically and what that tells us about broader processes related to earth science, like plate tectonics. And on that front, I've also done volcanology work in Iceland, as well as Southern California. So a lot of work in cold places, actually, setting SoCal aside. And so that was when I was in college, and I presently teach geology classes part-time at several places. In addition to UCSB, I have also taught at Santa Barbara City College, and I presently also teach at Antelope Valley College, which is a community college over in Lancaster. And I've also worked with the National Park Service at John Day Fossil Beds in Oregon. On that note, if you are a geology major or somebody considering geology, I'm very happy to talk with you. And I'm also very happy to talk about careers related to earth science because I've dabbled in a number of different fields. The TAs aren't here with me at my house, obviously, because we're socially distancing, but also that'd be a little strange. But I want to quickly introduce them. And how much you meet them will depend on how much you end up going to their office hours, basically. But I really do recommend attending their office hours at least once just to say hi to them and get a sense of who's going to be grading some of your assignments and who is putting the labs together. Because the labs are to a big extent driven by the TAs. They would be the ones teaching the labs if we were offering this as an in-person course, which we cannot really do right now. Hopefully soon, again. But anyhow, as I'll talk about more, you do not necessarily need to attend the lab section that you are assigned on Gold. In fact, you don't necessarily need to attend lab at all. You will be able to work on the lab assignments on your own time. However, the teaching assistants are going to be available during the times listed here to answer questions about the labs for some informal discussion sessions. And I really do encourage you to go to as many of those as possible and to attend, to basically have as much face-to-face time with the TAs as you can get. So the labs are going to be released every Friday. There's one that will release this coming Friday, April 2nd, and it'll then be due the following Friday, April 9th. So you have a chance the Friday and the weekend before to look over the lab and come up with questions that you might have for the TAs, or to look for parts of the labs that might be difficult. And so their office hours correspond with their section times on Gold, with a single exception. Rita Bai is presently based in China, actually. And so one of her sections is listed as 11 a.m. Tuesday on Gold. She can't do that, so she's instead doing Tuesday at 6 p.m. But otherwise, their sections correspond with their times on Gold. And again, you do not have to attend these necessarily, and you don't absolutely have to attend the section hosted by the TA that you are enrolled in on Gold. The enrollment on Gold is honestly a little bit of a formality this term. But the TAs are also available by email, and I really do suggest that when you start going to TA office hours, you at least start by going to the person you're assigned to, just to spread things out. However, if there is a day when that doesn't work out for you, it is completely fine for you to attend a different section. It's also fine for you to go to more than one throughout the course of a week. Like if you attend a Tuesday section and then realize you have more questions, it's completely fine for you to show up at a Thursday section also. And it's sometimes also useful to get a second opinion from more than one TA. So that's one advantage for online learning in a sense. It gives you a chance to talk to more than one TA, get multiple opinions, and also it gives you some flexibility if there's, again, a day when you can't attend your set time. The only reason I really encourage you to at least try to make the ones that you're assigned is just to spread things out. Mostly just we don't want the Thursday and Friday TAs being completely bombarded. And I do want to note, actually, I mentioned Rita is based in China right now, and Ugo is also based in Ecuador right now. So there's a little bit of spread out in terms of where we all are. I'm in Santa Barbara, and I'm near. Richard is also in Santa Barbara, and I'm pretty sure Kelsey is still in California. But um, regardless, we do understand that people are spread back to their various places right now because people are not physically on the UCSB campus. And please reach out to us if there's ways that we could make the time difference easier. I'm available to meet by appointment outside of my office hours as long as you give me some set time ahead. And the TAs are somewhat flexible. The TAs, I would say, don't expect them to be able to meet you outside of office hours, but you can always try, and they also are available by email. So again, we're happy to do what we can. So I'm going to talk more about all of these in depth, but this is the gist of what this course is going to function as this term. There is no need to watch the lectures or attend lab or take the quizzes or exams at a particular set time, with a caveat. Exams are going to be open during windows of times, but it's not like you have to sit down at, say, May 26th, 3 o'clock. If you're not taking the exam then, you fail. That's not how this class is going to function. This class is almost entirely asynchronous. So I will be recording my lectures on my own time, with a handful of exceptions, and those exceptions are the review lectures that are close to the midterm and final. Those are marked in the syllabus, and I will be doing those just to get a little more, just because they're going to function as long review sessions, basically. I'll talk about how some of my office hours will have review sessions recapping material from previously in the term. But I will actually also be recording and uploading those lectures to view, so if you miss them and want to view them, you will be fine. And again, for the labs, you do not have to attend the sections necessarily. You won't be penalized if you don't go to them, and they're serving more as office hours than anything. And again, it is completely fine to drop by a section other than the one you were assigned in gold if that works better during a week. So this class is asynchronous, but that doesn't mean you're off the hook with deadlines completely. It is still up to you to make a note as to when assignments, labs, quizzes, and tests are due. And we would like you to treat the due dates for these assignments and quizzes and tests as hard deadlines. Regarding the lectures, you're also going to want to make sure that you don't fall too far behind with watching lecture videos, taking notes on them, and checking the slides that are posted. I would say that one of the worst mistakes you can make with this class is to leave a gigantic pile of unwatched lectures that you still have to get through in the 1 or 2 days leading up to the day that the midterm or final is due. You don't want to be reviewing the videos you don't want to be seeing the videos for the first time during the week of the midterm. You might want to be looking at them for review, but hopefully you've seen everything before the midterm. The lectures will be released on Mondays and Wednesdays. I will be aiming to have them uploaded in the morning or early afternoon. This first Monday, I sort of goofed up a little bit, but the only exception is Memorial Day, which is Monday, May 31st, and that is a holiday that UCSB observes, and that is actually during Dead Week, which works out fine because it helps me avoid having to miss material. Now, the labs will be released on Friday afternoon, and they will be due the following Friday. And due dates for the reading assignments, quizzes, and exams are listed in the syllabus. I'll also have them on the slides in this lecture. And I want to mention that for all due dates, and that goes for labs, quizzes, tests, and assignments, the due dates given are for 11:59 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So if you are out of the United States, or if you're in New Jersey or Florida or Colorado or somewhere else in the US that has a different time zone, you'll just want to make a note that you don't want to get caught asleep at the wheel with the time difference. Like, don't be that person who misses the deadline to submit the midterm because you didn't realize that it was going to close at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time versus Hawaii Aleutian Time, or whatever names they give the time zones in China, as a couple of examples. And again, I'll be holding my office hours during the times that the course is scheduled to occur on Gold with a bit of extra time. And these office hours are informal and optional, but I recommend attending them at least sometimes. For one thing, because I'm happy to answer questions, and it can be also nice to get some face time. And I like seeing the students, aka you, in the sessions, because I've done a lot of radio, and I'm actually pretty used to talking to nobody in a sense. And people are listening to you on the radio, but nobody's in the studio with you. But it's still nice to get some face-to-face interaction. And also, the syllabus has notes as to when I will host review sessions of the previous week's material at the start of office hours. That will be most Mondays. And I will be recording and uploading them, but it's worth attending them just because, again, it's good to get some face-to-face interaction, and that's one chance where you can actually ask me questions as I'm going through the material. Now, if my office hours are not convenient for you, I can make appointments. You just need to let me know at least a day in advance of the desired time, and I can't guarantee that I can make a time work, but I will do my best. And I do my best to answer emails as fast as possible as well. So again, I'm here for you, even if I'm physically miles or possibly even thousands of miles away from you presently. I'm your teacher, and I am here to help you with the class. So the lectures will be released on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I then recommend that you watch them ASAP, hopefully before the next Monday at least. Again, you can work at your own pace, but you don't want to end up with a gigantic pile of material to go through and then a bunch of unanswered questions that you have to just set aside before you have to take a test on it. So I will be posting the slides that I lecture from, but they are an outline, and I think that watching the videos helps you get the context behind the points a bit better. Now, I will be posting the lectures in both PDF and PowerPoint form in the various folders on Gaucho Space. And I do recommend checking out the PowerPoints if you can, because those contain the notes that I lecture from, and that gives some useful context. And that's a decent second best thing if there's one lecture you just don't have time to view. Ideally, you watch all the videos, but the next best thing is looking at the PowerPoints. Now, if you don't have access to Microsoft Office, it's actually possible to get it through UCSB, and there's a link to do that under course resources. Close to when the midterm and final open, I will be posting a bullet point study guide that summarizes the key terms contained within the lecture slides. And those key terms are terms that in the lectures that I'll actually be testing you on will be in bold or underlined. Again, the study guides are useful, but it's hard for you to do well on the exams just based on that. It's a reference for the most important concepts contained within the videos, but you're going to want to watch the videos. There are also some weeks when there will be short articles or excerpts for you to read, or excerpts from movies that I post on Gaucho Cast and give you links to watch on Gaucho Space. And I recommend watching or reading those around the same time as you watch the lecture videos, since I will reference them in my lectures. They are fair game for quizzes and exams. There will not be a lot of questions on them, but one thing I want to note is that some of the two lecture quizzes will have each 2 short answer questions, and I can almost guarantee you that I will ask you a general question about general themes in the movies and readings for at least one of those short answer questions. Now, I will be posting the lectures on YouTube and GauchoCast, as well as video files in the folders where I will also be putting the slides. And you will want to periodically check Gaucho Space for when lectures and lecture slides are uploaded. Now, the same videos are going to go in all 3 places. YouTube has the slight advantage of automatically generating closed captions, and those are not always completely accurate, and they also show up maybe 1 or 2 days after the video has been posted, but that may help if English isn't your first language, and I will do my best to check through them for accuracy. And I am happy to assist if you have any trouble accessing the videos. I'm aware a lot of people are out of the country, and that's one reason I upload the videos on Gaucho Space, because I know sometimes there's issues with accessing YouTube. And there is no textbook for this class. I don't like textbooks, frankly. Honestly, I find that when I teach with a textbook, the students end up maybe needing about, like, reading about 1/10 of it maybe, and it's not that useful, frankly, and it just kind of turns into a cash cow for the publishers. So I prefer to select readings and videos to assign so that I can do a better job of just targeting them to the material I actually teach. So Gaucho Space is kind of the hub for this class, and you're probably in the habit of checking it fairly often by now, just because you've most likely been learning online for several quarters now. But it is where I will be putting everything: the lecture materials, the lab materials, the actual lab assignments that you need to turn in, the quizzes, the exams, the reading assignments, etc. And at long last, the Gaucho Space page for Earth 10 this quarter is finished. Some of the items on there are placeholders. There's some labs that aren't open yet, but you can kind of see when things are due. One thing to note is that um, the assignments are posted in the week they are due. So it's worth looking through all of the pods on Gaucho Space just to see what's due on a given week and what reading you're going to have to do each week. Now, the top pod is for course resources. So there's the syllabus, information regarding the instructor and TA office hours, the playlists for the videos of lectures on YouTube, and recordings of review sessions, and a few generally useful links like how to get Microsoft Office and some animations that'll be useful when we do the geology part of this class. And you can see that there is no lab for this first week. But there will be a lab posted for week 2, climate of Antarctica, week 3, etc. And you can also see that there is a folder that will have, for each lecture, that will have the relevant files. And if you click on these links, that'll take you to a page where you can download the PDF or download the PowerPoint slides for the lecture, as well as the video files if you prefer to view them that way and open them in an app like QuickTime or VLC. They'll be posted as MP4s, so they should be pretty easy to open. So we will have a total of 8 labs, and there is no lab due the first week, and there is also none due during week 10, which is dead week, when I am actually technically not allowed to give you assignments. So note that there is going to be a lab during the week of the midterm, so you will want to plan your time accordingly. And you will be able to work on the labs on your own time, but within a week-long window. So each Friday, starting this Friday, April 2nd, a lab assignment and any of the required materials to complete it will be posted on Gaucho Space. And then you will have until 11:59 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time the following Friday to submit the lab. The labs are not timed, and you are able to work on them in stages and save your work, but they will submit automatically at the due date if you have not already submitted it, so make sure that you don't leave them with unfinished work. And please look at the lab as early as you can and figure out if you think you'll need help, just so that the TAs that have Friday sections aren't completely bombarded with people. You don't have to attend your specific section again, but it is worth attending them, but try to plan so that if you have questions, you attend the one that you're assigned, just to spread things out. And it's worth attending them just if you need help in an office hours like setting. And you can indeed email any of the TAs, but I'd say that if you're doing questions by email, just email the person that you are assigned to, just again to spread things out a bit. I realize this is a little bit hand wavy, but I'm trying to not overwhelm the TAs who have sections on Thursdays and Fridays. We don't do makeup labs, but your lowest scored lab will be dropped. If you're anticipating difficulties submitting a lab on time, don't assume that we'll give you an extension or let you make it up. Email us before the due date, or email us just as soon as you have a sense that there's something that might stop you from finishing it on time. We want to know ahead of time. We want you to treat the deadlines as hard deadlines as much as possible, but we recognize that there is a lot going on in the world right now, and that it's hard to get it's hard to focus on studying sometimes now. So just let us know as early as possible so we can help. And either way, your one lowest lab will be dropped. So if there's one lab you missed, it's not necessarily the end of the world. However, if you complete all of the labs, that increases the chance you're going to get a better grade, because instead of just the 1-0 you got automatically being dropped, maybe if you get 90 or 95% on most of the labs and you get 70% on one lab just because you struggled with it, you're fine because that's the one that gets dropped. And I wanted to note one thing, that my review sessions are mostly going to be about lecture material, but I will devote a small amount of them to talking about lab and how concepts from the previous lecture might relate to them. In general, the lab material is somewhat separate from the lecture in that I will not be testing you directly on the labs. However, the labs will roughly cover concepts that you learned usually the previous week. So after this first lecture, the second lecture that I'll release on Wednesday will be about geography, and likewise the lab released next week will be about maps. And next week we'll be learning about climate, and so the lab that is due in week 3 will then be about climate after we've discussed that in class. In general, you will want to direct questions about labs to your teaching assistants, but I am available to answer lab-related questions if needed. It's just that the teaching assistants are really kind of the people teaching the labs. So for lab-related questions, send that to them, but all other questions can go to me. And there's not a lot of homework for this class outside of the labs, but one exception is the 2 reading assignments that we have. And those are meant to engage you a little bit more with societal perceptions of Antarctica, as well as the research that's being done there. So for each assignment, you'll choose an article to write about, a news article or a popular news article for the first one, and then a peer-reviewed academic journal article for the second. And using the rubric posted on Gaucho Space, you will write a response that is greater than 400 words. And assignment 1 is open now if you would like to get started. It is due on Sunday, April 25th, which is at the end of week 4, right before the midterm opens. For that assignment, you would look for an article in the New York Times or CNN or the Rio Times or a newspaper or magazine, basically. And you're looking for something about Antarctica from the past 10 years. Stuff that is not from the US is completely fine, but it needs to be in English just because my limited Spanish and Japanese won't get me very far necessarily, and there's a lot of languages when I would just be hopeless with. And also, again, yes, just make sure it's in English. And feel free to run article ideas by me. I will have an outline of what you need to include in the write-up for the first assignment on the next slide. For the second assignment, which is due after the midterm, you would look at a research database such as those hosted at the UCSB library and find something that researchers had published and had other researchers look at, which is what I mean when I talk about peer review, and write about that. And you can write about penguins or Antarctic exploration or geology as long as it's Antarctica related. And this assignment, I also have it open now for people who want to get it started early on the off chance, but it's not due until Sunday, May 30th. So you have a while, and I won't go over the rubric in detail for a while, but if you do come across an academic article that you think might be useful, I'm very happy to take a look at it now. And here in summary is what you need to do for assignment number 1. And again, feel free to email me or come to discussion sessions to run article ideas by me. I'm not opposed to bizarre or gross topics. This is actually something that somebody submitted and got full credit. Somebody wrote about this article and got full credit because they followed the rubric. And your response can be pretty open-ended. I'm kind of curious to see what you're interested in. But there are a few things you need to address. In your own words, you need to say what the main point of the article was. You need to tell me something you learned about in the article that you didn't know previously, and what was interesting about the article to you. And you also have to include a link. That is absolutely crucial. Aside from that, you're free to write about whatever aspects of the article interest you the most. And remember that the assignments are listed on Gaucho Space under the pod for the week when they're due. So assignment number 1 is due in week 4, so it's listed under week 4. And there's a rubric there that includes a common mistakes list. The things we've seen when teaching this class in past quarters that cause people to lose points, like forgetting to include a link or submitting a response that is less than 400 words, or one that uses the title of the article over and over and over again as filler to meet the word count. We will notice that, trust me. Or that plagiarizes content from the article instead of using your own words, or plagiarizes your peers' write-ups. Or if you write about an article that isn't from a reliable news source, please don't write about anything from like the National Enquirer or tabloids. That's just, don't, make sure that you're choosing a news source that actually fact checks. And the assignments need to be submitted on Gaucho Space. There is a place to type type it or copy it in when you, or when I say copy, like copy from a Word document, don't copy from the article, but you type it in the assignment on Gaucho Space, and it is completely fine for you to compose your assignment in a word processor and then copy paste it, but don't email it to me and don't put it as an attachment. It needs to be in the actual text box in the assignment on Gaucho Space. And there will be 2 quizzes on the lecture material this term. And if you look at the syllabus, you'll see that they're placed approximately halfway between the start of the class and the midterm, and then halfway between the midterm and the final in the case of quiz number 2. And they kind of function as useful check-ins. They will give you a sense of what type of questions to expect on the midterm and final, and they'll cover the lecture material released up to that point, as well as readings and assigned videos. When the quizzes open, I'll specify what lecture material is fair game for them, and that information is also presently outlined on the description for the quizzes in Gaucho Space. I will also be doing, I will be doing a review session on the Monday that each quiz opens, that will focus on what type of material you might expect to see on the quiz. Do not forget to submit these, because neither of them will be dropped, and missing one can really screw your grade up. It will also cause you to miss a really important chance to see whether you're understanding the material and a chance to prep for the midterm and final. That's really one reason I do the quizzes this way. It's to kind of give you a sense of if you're understanding the material. And they'll be conducted via Gaucho Space. You'll have 30 minutes to do them. And they will mostly be multiple choice or true or false, but there will be 2 short answer questions for each. And that is a place where you can expect some general questions about the movies or articles I assign you to read to show up. And the quizzes are closed notes, closed lecture slides, closed readings, and closed friends, aka don't be talking to your friends while you're doing this. Study before opening the quiz, and don't be referring to your reference materials while taking it. By the way, I want to mention that Gaucho Space lists the labs as quizzes just because that's the format we had to put them in. These are separate. The labs are not timed. These are 2 timed quizzes about the lecture material that have really nothing to do with the labs. So don't get confused on that. Now, speaking of the midterm and final, there will be a midterm and a final for this course, and they will function as long Gaucho Space quizzes. Each will be open for 75 minutes once you begin them, and they will consist of 50 multiple choice and true or false questions. There will not be any short answers for the midterm and the final. Neither the midterm nor the final is something you have to sit down at a set time, so I realize when classes are taught in person, there's a set time for the final exam. That's kind of irrelevant this term. The midterm will be open for all of week 5, from Monday, April 26th until Sunday, May 2nd. And there's not going to be any new lecture material during week 5. The lecture on Monday, April 26th is going to be a lecture reviewing the material that I record during office hours, and that'll give you a chance to ask questions. And I'll be hosting office hours on April 28th as well. The lecture that I put out on April 28th will just be a fun lecture about Antarctica that won't be tested on. So the midterm will cover material from lectures 2 through 8, meaning not this lecture. And to a much lesser extent, you will want to be familiar with the readings and video clips that I assign you during weeks 1 through 4. There's nothing that's due this week. There's nothing you have to read or watch this week necessarily, but the stuff is posted if you want to get ahead on it. And I will put out a study guide before the exam opens that will outline the various key terms from the lectures, as well as it'll give you a few questions to give you a hint as to what parts of the readings and videos you should focus on. Again, there's only going to be a few questions that relate to them, and the questions about the videos and readings will be pretty broad, so don't spend a lot of time rereading and rewatching them, especially if that's at the expense of studying the lecture material. The final will open on Saturday, June 5th, which is the Saturday after Dead Week ends, and it will close on Friday, June 11th, which is the Friday at the end of finals week. So the second lecture of week 9, as well as the only lecture that occurs during Dead Week, since Memorial Day happens Monday of Dead Week, those will be review sessions, and those will again occur during office hours, and I have those on the syllabus marked. The final will largely be focused on material from lectures 11 through 17, but to a lesser extent, you will want to make sure that you're familiar with the videos and readings that I assigned for weeks 6 through 9. You will indeed, however, want to be still familiar with the midterm because about 25% or 1 in 4 questions on the final will at least somewhat relate to pre-midterm material. I honestly will not ask you on the final. I'm not going to ask you questions about the readings from weeks 2 through 5, weeks 1 through 4. Like I'll put that on the study guide, but once you've had the midterm, that's kind of past. But the reason I do have some pre-midterm material on the final is because there are places where the concepts show up in multiple places. And in fact, lecture 18, which happens during week 9, part of its purpose is to connect the material from before the midterm to concept you've learned since the midterm. And again, you can take these exams on your own time, but treat them as closed book exams. Do not reference your notes, don't look at your slides, don't look at my videos, and don't talk to your peers. And I'm going to be writing the questions in a way that makes them a little, it's going to make it not very effective to just look through the slides and look up the answer. I don't want them to be too hard, but it's going to be written so that as long as you've studied and know more or less what all the key terms on the study guide are, you'll be fine. But if you haven't studied it, if you cheat and look at your slides, then you're not going to be actually in that much better off, because the questions aren't really just, I try to write the questions so they're not just regurgitating word for word stuff on the slides. So here's the grading breakdown, and I tried to structure this so that the quizzes don't, that the midterm and final don't occupy a horrific amount of your grade, but it's still 35%, so it's still quite a bit. You really do want to make sure you study for them and don't miss the due dates for them. And you can also see that lab is a big percentage. Lab is as big a percentage as the midterm and final. So you want to stay on top of the labs, and you want to make sure that you get all the help you need for them. And it's really crucial that you stay on top of lab assignments. Even with the 1 dropped grade, if you fail to submit more than 1 lab, it's going to make it harder to get a good grade. And the same goes for the quizzes and reading assignments, even though there's only 2 of them apiece. Because if you miss 1 of them, then that really kind of screws your grade up a lot, and that's preventable. And I also have the letter grade breakdown here, which feels pretty standard for what UCSB does. I do reserve the right to curve only upward, but the percentages in Gaucho space will give you your baseline grade. And it's worth it to keep your eye on what your grade is in Gaucho space, just so that you have a sense of where you are percentage-wise, and if there's things you could do to improve it, what category you might be struggling in, and also whether extra credit might help you. And I'll talk about extra credit in just a bit. And if you do need something to give you a bit of structure, here's a checklist for the course. It's not going to perfectly carry you through. You have to do some of your own work, but it gives you a concrete number of things to be aware of, I hope. And it's not a bad idea to check when the next assignment or exam is due, even if it doesn't feel like it's coming up, because with the quarter system, I went to school on the semester system when I went to college, and the quarter system still just feels so fast to me. It's really, you want to keep your eye on things before they get ahead of you. Not to mention that online learning kind of has a way of distorting time, and it's easy to start feeling lost if you begin to fall behind. Please reach out to me if you feel overwhelmed. I am happy to do what I can to get you caught up and to meet with you extra if needed. And we have a better chance of finding a good solution if you get in touch with me early. If you're messaging me in the days before the final, then there's probably not much I'm going to be able to do. Now, extra credit. I actually really like to give extra credit opportunities because, okay. Sorry about that. I recognize that some people who study hard still have a hard time with exams. And one thing that you can do to improve your exam grade is to do an extra credit write-up and email it to me. And there's 3 things you can do. You can go on a geology hike. That's my rice cooker. Ignore that. If you have a place near you that is open and where you can be socially distanced and where there is something interesting about the geology or wildlife, then you can do a report on that hike. And if you're in need of geology or other scientific information about the place, you can contact me. I have a lot of reference material, and I might be able to point you to some material. And these write-ups are pretty open, but it's make sure that you write a substantial amount. It needs to be more than 400 words. It's kind of like an extra reading assignment. Now, the second and probably easiest one to do is our department has a lot of talks related to geology. And just about every Thursday, in fact, at 2 p.m., a graduate student or a professor or visiting researcher talks about their research. And the talk does not have to be directly related to Antarctica or the course material, but one angle you can take is that if they do cover material that is similar to or that reminds you of anything you learn in this course, that is something you can talk about when you write your response. And our department actually sometimes has seminars that are separate from this, and there is one coming up on Tuesday, March 30th at 3:30 p.m. There's a UC Santa Cruz seminar that our university is also participating in, and a visiting professor from MIT is talking about the link between permafrost, which is the frozen layer in the Arctic soil, and the carbon cycle, which is linked to the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. And that's actually material we'll be covering later in the course. So it's potentially interesting in terms of being related to this class's material. And lastly, you can watch a documentary. I don't want you watching fictional stuff, but you can watch a documentary, whether it's a movie or TV episode about Antarctica. And it's fine to write about one of the movies that I assign if you watch the entire thing, because in this class, I generally don't have you watch anything more than a half hour. I don't want to eat up all of your time. But if you want to do an extra credit write-up on, say, Encounters at the End of the World, which is one of the documentaries I have you watch a bit of, then write about the entire movie. And for all three of these, you need to write a response that's greater than 400 words and email it to me. And for each response that I accept, you will get 3 points that I will add to your midterm score. So this can actually help you a substantial amount. I allow this 3 times per term. So again, you can get up to 9 points from doing extra credit if you're really dedicated, and that can make a big difference on your midterm score if you struggle with the midterm but feel motivated to improve that. So that's it for the course overview, and let me know if you have questions. And make sure to read the syllabus and go through the Gaucho Space site. The second half of this is kind of a fun lecture that isn't going to be tested on, but if you're interested in knowing about what I was doing in Antarctica, then it's worth watching. So check out Lecture 1B, Why Was Nicoletta in Antarctica, for that.